Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are back with our certified yoga therapist and friend from Malachite Yoga, Blair Douglas, joining us live here today from beautiful Denver, Colorado. Welcome back. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jill?
I'm doing well, thank you. Beautiful background. I love the setup. So whether you meant to do it today or not, it looks awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I like to move around the house, and today felt like a good day just to be on the couch. I feel like I've been in transit a lot over the weekend and the last few days, so I
Good.
appreciate it.
Well,
But
welcome back today. Tell us a little bit about the services you provide and what you do in your craft.
yeah, so I'm a certified yoga therapist, and so if we forget kind of what it looks like to go to a typical yoga class, like kind of throw that idea out the window. And it's more as if you were seeing like a psychotherapist or a PT, but the way yoga therapy works is we see people as a whole person. So whether it's a knee injury or something else, we work on that injury, but also we're going to work on the mental emotional aspects of it. And we use the lineage of yoga, but that does not mean that the asana is even going to come into play when we practice with our clientele. And everything is completely customized to that person and their needs.
Beautiful. And if we want to reach out to you, how do we do so?
Yeah, you can reach out to me anytime at malachiteyoga.com. That's MALACHITE yoga.com.
Perfect. All right. So tell us a little bit about today. We can recap last time, and I know we're going to kind of continue a little with that. That's why we're all
Yeah,
relaxed today.
we're all relaxed today. So the last couple of weeks, kind of what we've been talking about is it's almost like a checklist. So one of my specialties is chronic pain, along with neurological disorders and functional mobility. And so we've kind of been focused on that the last few weeks, and just these ideas and concepts that have really been spearheaded by Neil and Lisa Pearson out of Canada at Pain Care Aware. And so what we've been working towards is somewhat of like a checklist. So like we talked about the last few weeks has been, do I feel safe here? If I continue with what I'm doing, do I think I'll pay for it later? And then we talked about body tension, thoughts, and today we're going to talk about breath. So it's kind of this rundown that people can practice or use. And, originally what it was meant for was it started off as like for yoga instructors and other people to use when they're practicing yoga. But by no means does that mean it stays in that box. So let's say you were out on a walk or doing something else where movement's involved and you're somebody who suffers with chronic pain and pain starts to come up. These are a nice little check-in checklist that can be utilized to kind of start to learn about what's going on. I always suggest, like, even though I'm giving you these tips and tricks, I would still go see a professional, especially somebody who's like been certified through Neil and Lisa or is one of the trainers like I am, just so you can get more insight into that specifically. But this just gives people an idea and a spear point to kind of jump from to start to learn more about themselves. So, like we talked about last couple of weeks, right, is like our thoughts are impacting our pain. Our body tension is also impacting our pain. So, what about our breath? So, that's another key thing that they started realizing like, okay, so let's use an example. This weekend, or what is it? Yes, this is Monday. My days sometimes get mixed up. So, over the weekend, I spent some time at my mom's house painting. And part of that painting ended up being a ceiling, which is anybody who's painted a ceiling, it's not the most comfortable
My neck is
scenario.
hurting thinking
Yeah,
about that, but yeah.
right? Because you're looking up and you're like doing the roller above your head and like paint spraying on you. So it's one of those situations where even this weekend, I'm checking in with myself on how am I actually standing while I'm doing this? Am I doing it in a way that actually feels like it's never going to feel like super good painting a ceiling by any means, but is there better positioning for my body? Also, am I like clenching and holding? And the other thing is, am I actually breathing? Which comes into play a lot where we get into tenser positions or we're really focused on something. And you'll notice either you're holding your breath or you're taking very shallow breaths. These are typical things that come up. And this is stuff I work with my clients too. So even when I first meet with clients, we're not just we're having a conversation, let's say, but I'm also watching them breathe and I'm watching their body language, which a lot of other therapies do this. This is not just like yoga therapy is the only one watching you do this. If you see a psychotherapist, most of them are going to tell you, yeah, we watch people's body language. We're noticing how they're shifting and moving as they talk. what topics are making them like move into different positions, or maybe start holding a breath, or you notice the breath getting shallow. These are all key things we check in with as well. So even for myself this weekend, I'm like double checking, like, am I actually breathing in between all this? Like up, down, stroke over here, like, how am I feeling during this?
Yeah.
Because yes, it's a task that I've already committed doing and I'm going to do and I don't mind doing, but that doesn't mean I need to leave this situation
True.
and be in really bad pain, because like you guys might know, like I had some scoliosis for a while, and it's since I still have a little bit of scoliosis, but I don't have any discomfort and pain from it anymore the way I used to. And a lot of that's because of the movement I incorporate all the time into my own practice, for myself. But I'm sure, Jill, at some point in your life, you had this come up where you're like, am I actually breathing? Because it's something people will say that to you, like, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
So it goes a little deeper than that, though. So what I'd like to try today is just doing a small little, kind of like a micro meditation. It's going to be very small. And the key aspects of this is, and you'll learn like from Neil, Lisa, and just across the industry as a whole, what we're trying to work on is there's a lot of importance, and I've talked about this before, in how we speak to our clients, but also how we're just speaking to other individuals, and the language we use can make a big difference. And it could be something very subtle, like just using a slightly different word than another word actually lands better. And they've done a lot of studies to research to figure that out, of like, okay, this actually is working better when we say it this way than when we say it this way, or we see it in our clientele. So that's something like I've learned across the board too, is how we say it. So what I'm going to give you guys is a very small like snippet of something, and it's more just a breath awareness, but I'm going to wrap it in with a chronic pain meditation I like to do. It'll be really short. This is much shorter than I normally would teach it, but I think it might be a nice little taster, if that
Awesome.
makes sense. So wherever you are, if you want to get into a comfortable position, no matter what that looks like, if you're not sitting here up with us, you could be lying on the floor. You could be lying in a bed. It could be really any position where you can just feel like you can drop in. That doesn't mean you can't move during this. You might want to start to close down the eyes, find a good placement for your hands just so the shoulders can relax. And all I want you to do is just to start to notice your breath. And as you notice your breath, I don't want you to change it if possible. I just want you to become aware of the cadence. You might start to notice how the body moves with the breath, maybe feeling into the chest lifting, the sensation of the skin up against the clothes as the breath moves. Now what I'd like you to just start to do is I'd like you to make the breath maybe smoother. You might start to visualize what a smoother breath looks like. It might be more conceptual than actually physical. I'd like you to start to make the breath even softer. Now I'd like you to try to make the breath maybe a little longer, allowing the length to be controlled by you. If it's comfortable, continue with this breath cadence with a softer, smoother, longer breath. I'd like you to find a spot in your body, it could be anywhere, big or little, where you feel the most at ease at this moment. There might be multiple points, but just pick one that feels the most at ease. Imagine the breath swirling around that point, learning the ins and outs of the ease point. Now that you've picked your spot, just return back to your focus to the breath. Still continuing with that softer, smoother breath. Maybe it even gets a little longer. Now I'd like you to find a spot in the body that maybe has some discomfort. Doesn't need to have the most discomfort in your body. Just find a spot that feels maintainable. Once you find that spot, it doesn't matter what the size of it is. You might do the same thing here and just allow the breath to swirl around that area, learning it, acknowledging that there's some discomfort there. Now I'd like you to allow the mind just to go back to the spot of comfort. Imagine you could absorb 50% of that spot of comfort and pull it into the spot of discomfort, maybe relieving 50% of the sensation of discomfort, allowing some ease to come into that area with the breath. Just acknowledging the change in sensation between the two spots. Acknowledging that maybe you can pull a little bit more from that spot of comfort and ease into the spot of discomfort, allowing it to learn the sensation and feeling you'd like to have there. This will complete our micro meditation, but take your time to open your eyes or find any movement depending on where you are in the room. There's no rush. So Jill, I'd love to hear from you how that, I know it was very short and a lot quicker than I typically would teach it, but how did that go for you?
Good. It made me feel not only does my arm bother me, but my neck. But I got to focus and hone in on that spot. And I feel calmer from breathing. I don't ever think about breathing, right? Because it just happens automatically. Now my
Yeah,
breath, but yeah, I don't now I don't have to stop thinking about it. But
it's it's a natural thing that happens to all of us. We breathe. Like that's naturally occurring for the most part in the body. And so it's something that can be very unconscious, really easily checked out of. And it's not to say that you're doing something wrong because you haven't checked in with your breath every 10 minutes. By no means am I saying that, but it's a good checkpoint for when we're experiencing chronic pain or we have pain coming up during movement, let's say, to use that as an indication of, is my body sending somewhat like fight or flight information
mhm.
to me? And sometimes that comes out in the breath for people, right? They're holding their breath, it's gotten very shallow. And so that's another learning point of like, okay, so let's send a new signal. I'm not aware that I'm holding my breath or I'm very shallow and it's a little panicky. Could I take it down a notch and just learn the new cadence of my own breath, what's happening now, and maybe make it a little softer, a little smoother, or a little longer? And the difference here too is that language is different than you'll hear a lot of other instructors teach, where we're saying, take a deeper breath. I'm less worried about that. I'm
Mhm.
more in the thought process of you getting to visualize it coming in. And longer could be like maybe it does feel like it's coming down further, or maybe it just smooths out enough where it's moving in a different way. Less concerned about it like coming down to the bottom of the lung and getting all the way back up. So it's just a cognizant thing that people can use as a way to self-soothe almost, right? So we do a check-in and then we acknowledge, okay, maybe there is some stuff happening here. Maybe I am holding my breath. Could I change this? And this is a good entry point of, okay, that's great. You told me to change my breath, but what does that mean?
Mhm.
And so like that is where like we come in and it very individually personalized information that we're giving to our clients, but it helps just people to get a start point of like a little more comfortable with acknowledging their breath. Because if no one's ever talked to you about it, it's a little like, okay, yeah, it's a thing. What am I supposed to know about this? thing that happens naturally. Most of us don't know all the ins and outs. So it's something I love to hear people experiment with, or they talk to me about it a lot. Like, I noticed I was holding my breath today, or I was like doing this other thing, or like all this stuff came up and like my thoughts went here, my stress level went way up, and I was like, I was holding my breath, or I was very shallow breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it with anxiety and other things too. So for anybody watching this too, my suggestion is try this throughout the week. Do a check-in on your breath. Whether you're experiencing chronic pain or some other thing is going on, sometimes it can just be nice to do a check-in. And sometimes I think there's a confusing point where chronic pain is acknowledged as like somebody must be in really bad pain where they're not able to function, which is not always true. Sometimes people that are doing look very mobile, lifting boxes, doing all this other stuff, are experiencing a ton of pain, but they've just gotten to a point where they're going to override their system to keep doing it. And then they usually end up, some of them pay for it later, right? So, what if we could mitigate before that happens? Of like, here's a check in, here's some things we can do to change that. And maybe we can lessen the experience of the chronic pain that's happening when you're doing like work tasks per se. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, and you got me thinking. I do a lot of the reverse breathing. I think a lot of women may do, especially like my stomach. You try to suck in your stomach and you realize I'm breathing opposite. I should be breathing in and my diaphragm should be expanding, and I do it opposite a lot of times. And you have me thinking about that too. I don't know why. I think I know why I do that, because you try to suck in all the time. It's just, whoa, it
Yeah.
makes a difference.
Yeah, and there's like a ton more research now out, and there's been a lot more studies done too on breathing specifically, but also for women. So in the sense of a lot of times too, we've been told like, oh, we want to like improve our pelvic floor. Let's retighten the pelvic
Hmm.
floor. That is not always the case that helps improve women's health. Like there's been a ton of studies and research now that a lot of women have very tight pelvic floors. That is not the problem that's happening, and not why they're having like pain and other stuff come up. And of course, and thank goodness there's now specialists who can talk to women about this stuff. But for the longest time, like, I mean, I used to say this all the time in my yoga class, like engage from your pelvic floor, lift up through the pelvic floor, where, you know, you're using that, you're using your breath to pull everything up, where there's a huge majority of women, like we've already been doing this.
Yeah.
Everything's held, right? We're already here. And then it was like, okay, but we never asked them to like release anything. So there's no like elasticity that we want to have in these diaphragm based areas because we haven't ever said, okay, now relax everything. It was just always hold it. So
Hmm.
even that thought process too, like I've known a decent amount of people, like young women who've had tons of pelvic pain issues. And a lot of it had nothing to do with they were too loose. It had to do with like one side was way too tight and pulling on like other things.
Wow.
So it's just another aspect of like we've told people for a long time, like, what's going on with breath? Why don't you take a deeper breath? And like we do naturally as women. I mean, I do this, and I'm gonna say maybe not everybody in the population of women do this, but like I am also someone who's do this all the time, like, right, we do the deep breaths, we're hugging and engaging everything in. And like, yes, it's let out, but it's still then you kind of keep the engagement. Like you want to stay that little bit tucked. So finding that space where we can kind of let that go and have more control and thought process of our breath of being something more like almost like a wave washing over the body to soothe and relax and release and let go of some of the stuff that isn't serving us or needed at that moment.
Got it. Thank you. All right.
Yeah.
We still have some time here. What else did you want to add for today?
No, I think, after the last few weeks of what we've been talking about, my big hope for takeaway is like, I'm telling you, I'm telling everybody this, right? In the sense of like, I'm giving you information, but it's just the cusp point. It's like such like a teaser in the sense of a lot of people and my clients alone and other people that are working with yoga therapists or working with specialists in whatever area you're trying to seek help in, seeing a specialist who really wants to customize something for you specifically can really make a massive change. Like I've seen it happen, make massive changes in people's health and well-being, not just on a physical level, but much more on an emotional and mental level, because people suffering with chronic pain or other stuff going on, it's not just the physical. There is so much more happening there. And, I can't say enough to be seen by somebody, like fully seen by them, and just them acknowledging, like, I'm going to be here with you for the next hour. And then I'm going to see you next week. And I'm going to see you again. But I'm also thinking about you throughout the week. And we're going to keep working together. And you're not alone in this journey. I love to tell people, like, the door is always open with yoga therapy. You don't need to have ever seen anybody, and ever gone to a yoga class, ever looked at yoga journal. Like, you need zero knowledge. You can treat it as if, like, I'm yoga and I'm just going to show up to a therapeutic appointment with you, and we're just going to go for whatever you need done. And sometimes, like I've said before in the past, it's a walk, it's a chat. It doesn't have to look the way we think traditional yoga looks in the Western society. And so I hope this brings a lot of curiosity for people at the end of the day, of becoming curious with how my thoughts are impacting my body and my mind and my pain levels, how my tension level is doing that, and also how my breath is doing that. And just having that acknowledgement to allow yourself to check in, but also just being able to remember that is another challenge. So that's where sometimes we come in to help get that scheduled in there so it's actually getting done. But yeah, I hope this leaves people with more curiosity than anything, that yoga therapy doesn't mean an asana class, like a hot Bikram class or something along that line. Is so not so far from it, but it's so far from it in the sense that we use all the lineages of yoga really to customize and build something for each person. And it's such a great honor to get to work in my industry alone. And it's kind of a quiet industry, but such a nice complementary industry to people seeing other healthcare providers. And I always tell them, like I've mentioned before, you keep seeing those people. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to support you and help you meet the goals you want to meet. So hopefully that leaves people with some kind of inclination and information where they're like more curious about yoga therapy, not just maybe even for themselves, but you never know, family members, friends, stuff like that can be a big like doorway in to learning something new and getting help that you need.
All right. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
Malachite Yoga, the best way to reach you, the website?
Yeah, you can reach me through my website, which is malachiteyoga.com. That's MALACHITE yoga.com. And you can also email me directly through there. I'm on the therapists and instructors page. So anytime.
We still got 3 minutes. I don't want to cut you short. So is there
Oh,
something
no.
else you want to add?
No, I was
Sometimes we
just
wrap
gonna
up early. I don't know. I don't want
It's
to.
all good. No, I was just gonna say, like, I'm always happy also to do 15-minute consultations with people, because that's another thing is it's really hard when you're vetting like where to spend your money on what healthcare products, right? So we spend it on lotions, other face stuff, other therapies, other things. But sometimes when you don't have a vast background of yoga therapy, it's good to have a touch point to learn more. So I always suggest people reach out to me, email me. I'm happy to do 15-minute consultations so they can learn more about what it looks like to work with a yoga therapist before diving into the full, gamut of everything.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Pleasure to see you, and have a
of course.
fantastic weekend and extended longer Labor Day weekend.
Hi, my name is Blair Douglas, and I'm a certified human. Just kidding. I'm actually a certified yoga therapist specializing in chronic pain, neurological disorders, and functional mobility. If you're somebody living with one or all of these things and looking for support in your life, contact me anytime at malachiteyoga.com. That's MALACHITE yoga.com. I look forward to hearing your story.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.